Okay, there we are. Forgot to get things started on time. I blame Egan.
It's 2 minutes, whatever.
It's his
Close enough.
turn. Yeah, exactly. So, hello, my name is Colin, and welcome to episode 34 of Roll by Roll's Tavern Talk, a show where we, the Roll by Roll gang, discuss various aspects of running a great D&D campaign based on our experiences with D&D 5e and our current adventures in Emathan homebrew campaign. So joining me tonight from the Roll by Roll crew, we have Egan, who plays Douglin McCain. Welcome, Egan.
Hello, thank you for having me.
And we have Max, who plays Kogon Dremna Finstruma. How's that? I'm getting better. I'm getting
Pretty
better.
close. Pretty
Getting
close.
better.
Not
Getting
Not
better.
too
bad.
bad.
By the end of the
Just get
campaign, I might have it.
some
Draconic as a
enunciation
second
changes
language.
need to happen there, but it's close. It's getting close.
Nice.
All right. Well, welcome, guys. Okay,
Thank
so I have a confession to make. And this is gonna blow you guys away. I'm not the best at D&D 5e rules. Okay.
Hey, come on now.
Hey,
think we're all
I
tied
know
for
the
third.
rules. I know the rules that are the basis of most of the game during a night, but I am in no way, shape, manner, or form do I know all of the rules. So
Colin, you know the most important one,
What?
the rule of cool. That's
The
all that
rule of
matters.
cool, yeah. And I certainly don't think I'm alone on that. So
No.
anyway, with that in mind, we thought tonight we'd talk about some of the rules that are underused or quite often forgotten altogether. So, Max, why don't you have a
Start with
couple of
one.
cool ones? Yeah, why don't you
Okay.
kick us off tonight?
Okay, so the ones I grabbed from are in the Dungeon Master's Guide, and they're technically optional rules. So this isn't like people misinterpreting them. I think they're just kind of those things that no one talks about. They're hidden under a rock somewhere. Players don't really buy the DMG so much. You know what I mean? Like it's not coming up very often. So this one's really cool. It's literally called Climb Onto a Bigger Creature. And if you picture, when Sam and not Sam, who is it? Merry and Pippin
Merry
jump
and Pippin.
onto the troll in Lord of the Rings, it's that sort of idea. So the whole point here, it's similar in essence to grappling, but when a creature is too big for you to grapple, this allows you to have something to do in that sort of sense. So if you're smaller than the creature, you can attempt to use a athletics or acrobatics check contested by the target's acrobatics check. And if you win, you effectively land on the creature, climb up it, however you have tried to do this, and you are now riding the creature as terrain, right? So you're not mounted on the creature. So I would assume that they could probably try to keep shaking you off and things like that. Um, oh yeah, It's a you can and when you're on the creature, the smaller creature gets advantage on attacks against the creature that it's on.
Makes sense.
So yeah, pretty cool. The larger creature's ability to attack the smaller creature depends on the smaller creature's location and is left to the DM's discretion. So there's a bit of a gray area in there for having fun with it and things like
Yeah,
that.
you're talking a dragon and you're on the dragon's back. It could be pretty hard for that dragon to
Yep.
attack, right?
It does say in here, though, you could try to scrape it off against a wall or
Yeah.
things of that nature. So there's lots of
Roll
fun you can have
over.
with it. Saving throws to make against it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I just think it's a really cool. It's flavorful. Everyone's thought of doing stuff like this. And probably people have done this without necessarily like doing it in this like hard-coded rule fashion. You know what I mean? So like, but yeah, I just thought it was really cool.
D
Climb
does
onto
it
a
also quantify like friendly creatures doing it? Like maybe a gnome that gets up on a what do you call it?
Well, that is an
Goliath type of
option.
thing.
That is an you
Yeah,
can mount a large creature. That's under mounted combat.
gotcha.
So that is mounted combat. This is different because there's constant contention there.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's an attack related thing, right? So because you're getting advantage against the creature you're mounted on, and
Hmm.
there's lots of mechanics for trying to shake one off and things like that, right?
Yep.
So yeah,
Very cool.
very cool.
It's a hell of a name. Climb on to
Yeah.
a bigger creature.
Yeah, the larger creature can dislodge the smaller creature as an action. And the same thing, contested rolls again, you know what I mean? Same idea.
Like a grapple. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
pretty
Cool.
neat.
Egan?
Well, I'm going to start with parlaying with enemies. This is an official rule from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I know we kind of, joke around like, oh, let's talk to the dragon and let's talk to this beast and all that stuff. But what I like is that they actually have a mechanic for all of this, and it is a lot more expansive than I thought. Um, well, first, if an enemy knows at least one language, traditional 5th edition rules have always allowed players to solve their problems through talking. This is useful for campaigns with lots of social intrigue, but the rules haven't always made it clear how DMs can measure this as an attempt. So Tasha's did a great job of kind of bringing that to the fore. And some of the examples I was looking through here, of course, you have to know a language, but that's not just the limit, because I was looking through here. Another benefit for like a ranger that kind of knows creatures, right? And so if they did research on what that creature likes,
Mm.
what terrain they're in and what sort of things would be helpful. I mean, some of these were funny. Aberrations. The brain or other organs of a rare creature. Like you give an offering
Oh,
and now you can pass through because you just gave
yeah,
it something
interesting.
that would help. So I thought it was very cool that they, dragons, gold and gems. I think we got out of a tough spot once, right, Max?
Oh,
Not too
yeah.
long ago with
Appealed
the
to the dragon's grandeur, basic sense of grandeur in any way
yeah,
we could. Yeah,
and that's a perfect example,
yeah,
which I
that's
know
good.
has come up, but they're quantifying it and stuff like that. So I thought this was good, and I think it is again like something that we don't really officially try to do, right? Most parties like see a monster, kill monster, right? There's no well, we're also two fighters that don't think very well. We just go right to it.
Well, I don't know.
Um, I'm
Yeah,
kidding, but yeah, I'm
Shogun has
just
definitely tried to, you know what I
yeah.
mean, like talk it out first, but
Okay,
sometimes.
aside from dragons that you will
Yeah,
worship,
fair
no
enough.
matter the color and the
Fair enough.
demeanor.
Yeah.
But yeah, this puts into place like DCs and how you can fluctuate that, like
Yeah.
things that would be positive or negative if you're hostile, if you're not hostile, and rewarding it as a successful encounter, right? That's I think what's
Oh,
important at the end of that is
yeah.
that at the end of the day, whether you defeat the enemy or bypass it to achieve your goal, you are still rewarded with a successful encounter. Obviously, you're running XP, then they
Yeah.
would get the equivalent XP as if they had, killed the monster. So I think this is really cool, and again, it is a rule that is there that we just
Yeah.
kind of do sort of once in a while, maybe. And this kind of puts it all together and makes it sort of official and mechanical.
Yeah, I mean that's one of those rules where I think you often do you often are up against, and the fact that there's actually a mechanic that you can use to kind of help you resolve what happens in that situation. It's there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I thought, but again, what I got the most kick out of was like just again, and you could come up with it like an ooze, a vial of putrid liquids. Here you go. Like these are all things that they would say, oh, okay, well, this I don't want to kill it. It's feeding me or whatever. Like you can come up with all sorts of
Yeah.
things to
Interesting.
offer to pass through and
As
stuff
a
like
form
that.
of
So
parlay. Yeah.
yeah, here's a
Yeah.
parlay.
Yeah,
Here's a
cool.
brain.
Cool.
So,
Well, my first one for the night. So the two that I'm going to talk about are they are, for me, they're in the underused rule, in that we often as DMs, I think we sort of follow these things, but we don't realize they're wider reaching sometimes than we play into. I'm going to talk about vision, lighting, and then for my second one, I'm going to talk about cover. But for vision and lighting, basically, vision is around lightly obscured areas or heavily obscured areas. And then your vision kind of falls into, so dim light is considered lightly obscured. Darkness is considered heavily obscured. So the rules kind of play into the how obscured your vision is. So around lightly obscured, dim light, patchy fog, moderate foliage. Now there's one right off the bat I never think about, like foliage. Like you're in a forest
Foliage, yeah.
fighting, your vision would be blocked by the trees and bushes from where you are. When things are lightly obscured, creatures have disadvantage on perception checks that rely on sight. And the area that this really comes into that I thought about was kind of around a passive perception, where you may not think to bring this into play. So, somebody is going to sneak attack on somebody, and you're trying to figure out the passive perception. You may not think about the fact that they're going through a forest where it is moderate foliage, lightly obscured. That changes the modifiers, right? So then you're getting +5, -5, depending on which side you're looking at, sort of thing. That's something like that I never think about bringing into play, right? Around heavily obscured, now we're talking darkness, heavy fog, dense foliage, which blocks your vision entirely. The creatures are effectively blinded. And Max, we talked about this a little bit where both sides are effectively blinded. So the advantages and the disadvantages are basically canceling each other out, which is a very weird dynamic, right? I mean, in that sort of a situation, you may have where the people on the ground can't see very well, but you have people up in the trees who can. So, I
Yeah,
mean,
something like that.
it can work out where one would be blinded and the other would not.
Or
But
creatures in melee are, now you like in a dense forest, for example, in direct melee, you could probably see each other at that point or
yeah,
something like
yeah,
that.
and that's another thing. I mean, when you actually, and I did this. I remember I did this when we were doing our Storm King's Thunder. One of the things that the characters loved to do all the time was cast fog, right?
Mm,
But I ruled if you got up to each other, now you can see each other. You're right there, like right
Yeah.
across from each
that makes
other,
sense to me.
engaged in battle. I may not have been able to see where you were, but maybe I heard you and I moved in that direction. Now I can see you. I'm engaged with you. So we kind of ruled around that. So around lighting, you've got bright light, dim light, darkness. All have the potential. Like darkness to a creature without dark vision is can also work the other way, where you say you have drow in bright light who can't see very well.
Interesting.
Another one of those things that you may not think about, right? It's working the opposite for them in that sort of situation. Then you throw in your blind sight, dark vision, true sight, all those things. There's a
Yeah.
lot of stuff in there that we may not think about all of the time, and how that actually, when in getting ready for this and I read through it all, I was just like, I forget so much of this stuff all the time.
And that, if you start using a lot of these rules more often and give them more weight,
Yep.
then you're giving those abilities that counteract them more weight. Like
Absolutely.
True
Absolutely. And
Sight
that
is a
is, I mean,
very high level spell.
yeah, and if you
Yeah.
have dark vision,
Mhm.
that is an advantage if you fall into a situation where the light source goes out,
Yeah.
Yep.
right? Like, and
Yeah.
if you're not thinking about, um, one side has 120 feet of dark vision and one side has 60, that plays into
Yeah.
who sees
Who
who.
sees who?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so yeah, it's pretty neat. It's to me, it's one of those rules that I almost got to, I was joking, I got to stick a post-it on my screen reminding me to give inspiration. I might have to do that for vision and lighting, because just before we started recording here, um, I was these sort of things can play in environmentally as an opponent almost in a battle as well, right? I mean, they can change the outcome of a
Oh
battle
yeah.
if suddenly everything goes dark and the party wasn't ready for it, right? So yeah, so
Absolutely.
that's my first one.
Well,
Max,
also, oh,
yeah,
sorry,
go
also
ahead.
creatures that have, you're going into their lair and they're built all around darkness. Like you're
Yeah,
going
yeah.
into a cave. You can't take that away. That's part of what makes them, dangerous, if you will. Sorry,
Yeah,
Mike.
and
No problem.
but Egan, you bring up a good point because as a DM, let's say you have a creature, even if it doesn't have any sort of dark vision, you could you could almost say it has blind sight by virtue
Hmm.
of knowing its lair so
Yeah.
well. Just knows where everything is all the time, and you could almost say like it almost has an effect of blind sight because it knows where everything is.
Yeah.
Yeah, Max, what do you got?
Okay. All right. The second one, same thing, more kind of combat action options. Uh, it's called Overrun, and then there's also one called Tumble, which is effectively the same thing, but let's get into it first here. So, basically, when a creature tries to move through a hostile creature space, which normally it's impassable in the regular rules, the mover can try to force its way through by overrunning the hostile creature. As an action or a bonus action, the mover makes a strength athletics check contested by the hostile creature's strength athletics check. The creature attempting the overrun has advantage on this check if it is larger than the hostile creature, or disadvantage if it is smaller. If the mover wins the contest, it can move through the hostile creature's space once this turn. So no running back and forth and doing any shenanigans, but yeah, allows you to kind of reposition maybe in a tight hallway or something like that. The tumble version is exact same thing, only it's contested acrobatics checks. So it allows your dexterity focused builds to also get the same scenario going for them as well, which makes sense. I mean, totally
Yeah.
makes.
I like this one. I mean, the idea that maybe you're pushing past kind
Yeah,
of or
muscling
you
your
do
way
some
through.
sort of you run up to them and kind of spin around them to get past
Yeah,
them. Yeah, that's kind of a neat
yeah,
mechanic you can use there.
and you are using an action or a bonus action. So you're it's not just on your move. You have to use resources to make this happen. So I think this one's actually really fairly balanced and opens up some cool possibilities in like tight combat situations.
You
So
you brought a perfect example when you guys were fighting the dire troll, right?
yeah,
And it had the entrance blocked. You could have used that. Kogon could have easily used that to push past to get
yeah.
around the other side, right? So
Or what if like you have an ally down and they're behind like a wall of enemies and stuff like that, and it's like,
Yeah.
wow, maybe I can just push my way through and give them a potion. Who, you know what I mean? Like,
yep,
might be the last ditch effort. Cool stuff like that.
yeah. I actually I kind of like that one. Now
I
we're
know.
gonna,
I really want to bring it into our
yeah.
game.
I am gonna do this next
Kogon is
game.
built for this for
No,
sure.
I like it because it's not a complicated
No,
mechanic.
no, it's
You're
not.
just it's like a variation on grappling, right? I mean, it's just a contested.
And a lot of characters sometimes struggle to make use of a bonus action.
Yeah,
You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And this gives you another option. It's not always going to be presentable, but like it definitely is an option there now for you to do something. So it's
yeah,
cool.
cool.
Like it. I thought it was very cool.
Egan.
All right. Well, my next one is sidekicks. This also comes from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. And it's, everybody's always trying to have a pet or, we've got our Hanu and all that stuff. But this is actually, again, it has rules on basically how you can gain these. It could be, for example, someone that you saved, and by the way, it can be any type of creature with a stat block in the monster manual. So if
Oh,
you've done something to gain, their trust or, whatever the case may be, You can even hire them, by the way. That's part of
I
what
was
it
just going to ask
can
that.
be.
Is there a difference between a hireling and a sidekick? I guess you don't
So
necessarily have to be paying a sidekick.
no, exactly. But it could be one because basically the difference between, let's say, a hireling, I think, is very specific to something that's going to have a specialty. So to extrapolate on this, sidekicks do fall into three different classes, if you will: expert, spellcaster, or warrior. Basically, the spellcaster is pretty straightforward. It is wizard, cleric, druid, even part of the bard or warlocks, right? And all of these have specific classes, but they're really sort of simplified. They level up with the characters. They gain spells based on this sort of let's call it a
Genre.
subclass, but it's again parried down. They have limited abilities. In other words, they're not just a normal PC.
Yeah.
They have very specific things that they have. Um, the warrior sidekick, pretty self-explanatory. The expert one is pretty cool because this is sort of like a rogue sort of bard because it has a lot of actions that help, that cunning action, things of that nature, but things that are very supportive. I mean, they literally have a ability called inspiring help. So, maybe it's the Witcher's bard, throw a coin to the Witcher.
Oh yeah.
But it's what's cool about it is that you have choices on how to play this. Like this, you can get with the DM. The DM can control it as a true NPC. You can have certain actions done, or it can just be another piece, character that the player plays. I know back in the day, I'm aging myself, paladins, because they had high charisma, they literally listed how many followers they could have. Like that was a big thing
Oh,
I
for
remember that.
paladins
I remember
back in the
that. Yeah.
day. They would have like,
interesting.
oh my God, three henchmen, and they would follow them because
Yep.
they were,
Worshiping is like grandeur.
yeah, they were
Yeah.
just so taken by that.
Yeah.
So,
In awe
uh,
of their holiness.
yeah, I remember this distinctly. Like, oh my God, paladins
Crazy.
get all these henchmen. Of course, we never used it back then either. We are just a paladin. But I think this is cool because they again give you all of these ways to have this become part of the party as a sidekick and all the things that go along with it. Again, not a PC. It's tapered down. It's simplified. They don't get everything even at 20th level. Spellcasters only get fifth level spells, for example.
Right.
So, um, and again, I was reading through some of the ways that you could acquire, let's call it, sidekicks, and I thought it was pretty cool. Save them. You could even have, a monster that you didn't kill because you offered him brains, and now all of a sudden it's going to tag along like a stray cat, right? You feed a stray cat. Uh-oh. Next day you're going to have three stray cats at your door. So, yeah, it's not something that, we really use, if I'm not mistaken. So
Yeah.
I thought it was cool.
Very cool.
Yeah, so for my final one here is around cover. And again, like I said before, cover is just one of these things. Don't often think about how it's playing in. Um, so, on the surface, cover is pretty straightforward. There are a couple of things about it. So, cover can be walls, trees, creatures, obstacles. Um, I think this is a target can benefit from cover only when an attack or other effect originates on the other side of the cover. So, you may be in cover, but someone is in beside you. They're not. They don't play into where that cover is. Um, so half cover +2 bonus to your AC. Three-quarters cover +5 bonus to your AC. Total cover, of course. I mean, you can't be hit by an attack or a spell. I mean, unless it's some sort of area effect spell that would still be able to get you.
But you do get bonuses to your dex saving throws as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
+2 and +5 as well. So it's
Yes.
also
Yep.
yeah.
And so for me, there's not that often that I can think of where myself or anybody in our has said, I'm going to use the cover here, or I'm going to use the cover here, or I'm going to duck behind this, when there are often lots of cover in the in that particular situation, right? And as I was going through this, I thought to myself, it's pretty feasible that when Kogon embiggens during a battle, that
Half
characters standing
cover,
on the other side of him would have
three-quarter
half cover.
cover,
You
at the
know?
least. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, he's a big boy, man.
yeah.
Yeah.
With a
Absolutely.
giant,
With a big shield and
yeah,
everything. You know what I
Yeah,
exactly.
mean?
like I mean, you could provide a lot of cover for somebody
Yeah.
who is behind you, right? I
Hmm.
mean,
Interesting.
yeah.
I like
So
this. I like that.
yeah, but again, it's cover is another one of those things that I know for myself as a DM that I want to think about cover, because it is another thing within the environment that you can use to change what's going on within the battle, right? I mean, um, if you have places on there where the enemy or the characters, whoever, could be popping out from behind cover,
Yeah.
shooting,
Ducking.
then ducking back
Oh
behind
yeah,
cover again.
absolutely.
Yeah.
That can be a big changer in terms of the way the combat unfolds, right?
Yeah.
And I never think about cover.
I,
I'm too
I
busy.
think
I can't think about cover. I'm too busy forgetting about vision and light and
lighting.
inspiration. Like I'm
Yeah.
just busy.
You know what's weird is that I think we also mesh this with line of sight. Like whenever keep in mind too, guys, we're doing a top view on a map in Fantasy Grounds
Yeah.
more often than
Yeah.
not. So you don't really see the environment except for the obvious ones, but we only sort of use it to say, "Hey, Colin, do I have line of sight?" And we don't even use it for the cover side of things. We just say, "Oh yeah, okay, yeah, you can throw the javelin here, no problem." But like that goes part and parcel. Line of
Yeah.
sight and cover are almost, a match made in heaven there. So yeah, we should definitely
Yeah.
use that
Like
cover more.
when Justin's character was shooting at that frost salamander from
I was just
between the
going to talk to
trees.
that. Yep.
Sure, he's got cover there, so he could have. Well, it was a con save, I guess, for ice blast. But anyways, he's got some cover there, but he's also shooting through trees. So yeah,
Yes.
that
Yes. Yep.
salamander should be afforded at least maybe half cover or something
Yeah, and
like
if
that.
Kogon was actually on the other side of a big tree
Yeah,
on the map, right? So again, that should have played in terms of cover. It
hmm
should have played in terms of lightly obscured.
yeah,
Like there's
lots of
all
things.
kinds of things that you could have said come into play there, right? And I just and also even I mean, I may have mentioned once, twice, 15 times this massive raging storm that was going on, which you could say
Oh yeah,
was
Yeah.
lightly
or
obscuring
heavily.
everything as well, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what I'm like. I really got to think about these things
Yeah,
when I'm putting the combat together and thinking about how it's going to play out. How will
we
these
could
things
like
affect it,
We
right?
can do our part too, though, if
yeah,
I may. Like we'll
well like
help with that.
the airship too. When we fought that thing in the portal, we could have been like, "Hey, can we fly into a cloud?" Like, is
Yeah.
Yes.
there
Yeah,
things like that?
absolutely.
To give
Yep.
us, you know, so, yeah, just
There's a perfect one. So, I mean, if you're
yeah,
fighting airborne creatures and you command the ship to fly into the clouds, and
yeah.
now it's heavily obscured and it
Yeah.
changes everything, right? So,
Then you can
Yeah.
make it random. You can be like, well, let's see if there's any clouds around. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
Yeah.
Like
yeah,
do a thing with
absolutely.
it,
If there's
like
anything close
yeah.
enough and big enough to
Yeah.
be of value, yeah. So, because
Cool.
I like the idea that it can unexpectedly change up
Yeah.
the way things are going in a combat, right? Like it
More
seems very
strategy.
straightforward. You're fighting the frost salamander, and suddenly Colin goes, "You know what? The storm just intensified, and
Yeah.
now everything is heavily obscured."
Yep.
Cool.
Right now,
I,
what are you gonna
I,
do?
it's amazing. There's so
Yeah.
much out there.
Oh
It's
yeah,
so much out there.
absolutely. And it's going to add to the fun, right? Because it
Yeah.
Yeah.
rather
Oh
than
yeah.
just the
More dynamic.
straightforward you go, I go, it's like all of a sudden, where did the frost salamander go? Because we can't see it anymore, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
So
Oh gosh.
yeah, yeah. So any final thoughts on the rules there, Max? The rules we forget about?
Yeah. I think if you're a player, you know, I like to keep the synchronicity of like not diving into the DMG side of things, you know what I mean? But maybe even just talk to your DM about like, hey, maybe there's some stuff that we could be utilizing more because it is tough for the DM to remember everything, you know? And like, so if you are in a combat, you could just bring up, hey, is there anywhere I could take half cover here? You know
Yep.
what I mean? Like,
Yep.
it's not
Just as a
meta to do
reminder.
something like
What's
that.
the
You're just
lighting
looking for,
like right now?
yeah,
And can I?
exactly. You're just
Because
looking
even
for ideas.
you jump in the trees, and now
Yeah,
it's dim lighting.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
totally could
Or
totally be
light
fun.
foliage or whatever, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah,
Yep.
cool.
Yep.
Egan,
Yeah, and if you have a brain that a monster likes, have a chat. You never know. Slap it down there. What are you gonna do with it, right?
Parlay.
what are you gonna do with
Parlay.
it?
Yeah, but I think to continue on what Max is saying, as a player, chances are there's going to be a mechanic for something that you want to try. And talk to the DM, or if it happens at spur of the moment, keep in mind there might be a call during, but chat about it afterward. Like, hey, could I have tried this? And if so, let's look up. If there's not a rule, then you know what? Come up with something.
Yep.
Like Max just said, is there a cloud in the sky that we can hide in? Great, let's see. Get
Yeah.
creative about it. But when Colin brought this topic up, I can tell you, I did not realize how many rules I did not know. There are so many, and I've
Yeah.
been playing for a long time.
Well, I mean, it is important to remember that a lot of these are just optional,
Yes,
right? They're not
and
the core, the
for
core mechanics,
obscure
but
situations that you may
yeah,
never, we did an episode on mounted combat, right? I mean, if
Yeah,
your campaign never ever touched
yep,
on mounted combat, you might never think about it. If your campaign never came to a situation where there was the possibility that your characters could suffocate. I know
mm.
there's rules for suffocate.
Oh yeah,
I cannot tell you what they are right now. I would have to go and
yeah,
look at them, right?
very
You
yeah,
know,
interesting.
there's a lot of rules that are there because you it's quite possible you could come up against that situation, right?
yeah,
Um D&D has a lot of rules. I mean, it has a lot of rules, right?
yeah.
And as a DM, it's going to be tough to remember them, especially the ones that aren't used. I know for myself, with all the bizarre and different character builds there are now, and
Oh
all
yeah,
the way those rules can go I can't keep up with all of that, right?
Yeah.
But you know, when I try and do my or when I'm doing my session prep, increasingly I look at what potentially could happen, and I just ask myself, are there any rules for this type of a situation? And I just go look, like, is there some
Yeah.
sort of rule that I might need to know to bring in there and refresh my memory on it, make a couple of notes, and then you're kind of ready for it because yeah,
Yeah.
there's just a lot of rules that you're not going to use that often and you're not going to remember them.
Or there's a rule for what you want to try to do.
Yeah.
You could look at it that way too. So
Yeah,
it's
I
great.
kind of like what you said there, Egan, with, if there's something you want to try, like you're a player and you're thinking, you know what, I want to try this tactic the next time we're in there. I know for myself as a DM, if you came to me and said, hey, there's this rule and I want to try and start doing this, could we use this? I would be more than interested in hearing about it and deciding whether or not, because you're probably going to try it anyway. Like, I can't say, well, no, you can't try that tactic. If there's a rule
Right.
for it, you're only helping me out, right? Because I don't have the rule
Absolutely.
on the situation.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
yeah,
That's great.
great chat, guys. So, I think that's a wrap. We're there.
We
So,
could keep going, but
yeah,
yeah.
we sure could. We sure could. So that's a
There might
wrap
be a part
for
two.
I
yeah.
love rules.
There may be. There's a lot of rules. So that's a wrap for episode 34 of Roll by Roll's Tavern Talk. We hope that you've enjoyed tonight's topic. Tavern Talks occur on the Thursday after each of our Saturday night adventures in Emathan sessions. Our next session is scheduled for February 1st, where we will be introducing a new player.
Huzzah.
Yeah. So for those of you watching on Twitch, please give us a follow. For those of you watching on YouTube, please like the video, subscribe, and we greatly appreciate you for doing so. It's for those of you on Twitch. Who am I kidding?
Good
Future
one.
people.
All right. So, as has become our tradition, to end the episode, we will offer you a cheers. Thanks for joining us in the tavern, and hopefully you can join us next time. Thanks, guys.
I mean, who's on Twitch on Thursday night?
Yeah.
who D&D related could we possibly be competing with
who
on
else would be
Thursday
out
night?
there on this
Yeah.
time? I mean, it would require some critical thinking to really figure
Yeah,
that
very
out.
critical.
Yeah. It would play a role in us
It would play a
getting that,
role in,
yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
Who's
All
thinking
right.
to themselves, is it Thursday yet? You know?
Yeah.
Can't
Is
wait.
it well, maybe it's their break. We'll time it to where we start
Yeah.
right when they go on their break.
Yeah.
I can't stay up that late.
All right, guys, signing us out. Thanks.
Oh, that was